The airport was colder than she expected. Not in temperature. London in late summer was humid and restless, but in the way every goodbye seemed to echo against glass walls and polished floors. Malik stood at the departure gate, suitcase in hand, her heart pounding harder than the roll of any jet engine. Daniel was beside her, hands shoved deep into his jacket pockets, staring at her with an expression caught between disbelief and desperation. His lips trembled as if a dozen arguments, apologies, and accusations fought for release, but none made it past his teeth. He had stopped talking an hour ago, when the taxi dropped them at the terminal. "Are you sure?" he asked finally, his voice breaking the silence like a fragile pane of glass. Sarah didn't answer immediately. She had rehearsed words on the drive, lines about independence, about opportunity, about building a future she claimed she couldn't find here. But now, faced with his eyes, she faltered. Instead of explanation, she reached for his arm, resting her hand there for just a second, as though touch could replace truth. "It's just work, Daniel," she whispered, though they both knew the lie was flimsy. "Just a chance I can't pass up." He flinched. "Work." The word sliced through him like betrayal in disguise. He wanted to ask what kind of job demanded secrecy, why she had become so guarded in the past 6 months, why her phone glowed late at night with messages she never let him see. But fear stopped him, the fear that hearing her answer would destroy what little was left of them. The boarding call sounded, and Sarah's stomach tightened. She wiped at her eyes quickly, not wanting him to see her tears. The truth weighed heavily on her chest. She wasn't flying to Dubai for a job. She was flying toward a man who had promised her a new life, one stitched together with wealth and affection. A man Daniel would never know about, at least not yet. "Take care of yourself," Daniel said at last, voice hollow, as if he were already grieving something he couldn't name. She nodded, unable to speak. Her throat burned. With a final squeeze of his arm, she turned and walked toward the gate, her heels clicking against the tile in sharp, lonely beats. She didn't look back. She couldn't, because if she did, she might run back into his arms and undo everything. From his place near the glass, Daniel watched as she disappeared into the tunnel leading to the plane. His reflection looked foreign to him, tired and defeated. He pressed a hand against the cool surface, as though that could tether her to him. But soon, the tunnel sealed, and the plane carried her into the sky, a streak of light against the fading horizon. On board, Sarah fastened her seatbelt with trembling hands. The city lights fell away beneath her, and with them, the life she had built with Daniel, 5 years of shared apartments, Sunday mornings with cheap coffee, whispered dreams about children they never had. She closed her eyes and told herself it wasn't betrayal. It was survival. Yet the whisper of doubt followed her into the clouds. What if this choice doesn't save me? What if it destroys me instead? The plane cut through the night, carrying her toward promises wrapped in gold and shadows she had yet to see. Dubai struck her first as unreal, glass towers rising like monuments to ambition, endless highways pulsing with luxury cars, the desert burning gold at the horizon. The air smelled of heat and perfume, a blend of possibility and danger. Sarah pressed her forehead against the tinted car window, watching neon lights shimmer against the night. This was the world she had been promised, though already it felt less like homecoming and more like performance. The driver said nothing, only followed precise instructions. When they reached the private residence, the gates swung open with mechanical grace. Inside, the mansion glittered like a palace lifted from another time, marble floors veined with silver, chandeliers the size of small rooms, silence, so heavy it seemed rehearsed. At the top of the stairs, Sheikh Karim appeared. He was younger than she expected, early 40s perhaps, with dark eyes that missed nothing. His smile was deliberate, controlled, like a man used to commanding attention without asking for it. "You are safe here now," he said, his voice deep and calm, though every syllable carried authority. "No more small apartments. No more struggling. Here, you will breathe differently." Sarah forced a smile, though her pulse quickened. He didn't extend his hand, only gestured toward the hall. The gesture alone was enough to make her move. Rooms unfolded like dreams, silk curtains whispering in the air conditioning, walls adorned with gold-framed calligraphy, floors that swallowed sound. Every surface announced power. He had given her a place in this empire, yet she felt like a guest who might be asked to leave at any moment. Later, seated at a long dining table with more food than she could eat, Kareem watched her closely. His gaze was steady, assessing. "You left everything behind for this," he said. "Do you regret it already?" "No," she replied quickly, though her throat tightened. "I wanted something new. Something more." His smile deepened, but it wasn't warm. "Then you will have more. Everything you desire. But understand, what is mine must remain mine. That is the only way such promises endure." The words lingered like perfume and warning combined. Sarah nodded, though unease coiled inside her. That night, in the vast bedroom prepared for her, she stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows, staring at the city glowing beneath her. It was beautiful, yet distant. She thought of Daniel, alone in their quiet house back in the UK. His absence pressed against her chest like a bruise. She tried to convince herself she had chosen wisely, that this life would bring her freedom. But even in the glittering palace, she sensed invisible walls. Kareem's voice echoed in her mind. "What is mine must remain mine." As she pulled the silk sheets around her, exhaustion finally overtaking her nerves, she wondered not about wealth or comfort but about cost. Nothing this extravagant came without one. And far away, across the sea, Daniel Malik sat in silence, staring at the empty chair across from him, already consumed by questions he would never stop asking. The house was too quiet. Daniel sat at the kitchen table, his hand resting on the rim of a cold mug, eyes fixed on the empty chair across from him. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound, filling the silence Sarah used to break with her chatter about work, groceries, or half-formed dreams. Now, silence pressed against him like a weight he couldn't lift. Her absence grew louder each day. At first, he told himself it was temporary, just a job abroad, just a new adventure. But the suitcases she took, the way her eyes lingered on him at the airport, the tremor in her hand when she touched his arm, none of it felt temporary. It felt final, and he hated himself for knowing that. By the second week, neighbors had begun to notice. Mrs. Carver from next door, pruning her roses, leaned over the fence one morning. "She gone for good then?" "Can't say I'm surprised. Young women these days want more than a simple life, Daniel." He muttered something polite and went back inside, but her words cut deep. Soon the gossip spread. Sarah's sudden disappearance from community gatherings, her cheerful absence at Sunday church, her laughter missing from the local cafe, they all became stories others shaped in his silence. His mother was the only one who confronted him directly. She sat across from him in the living room, her sharp eyes narrowing. "Why won't you tell me the truth?" she demanded. "Where is she really? Did something happen between you?" Daniel rubbed his temples, exhausted. "She needed space. That's all." "Space?" His mother scoffed. "Women don't fly across the world for space. She's with someone, isn't she? And you're too ashamed to admit it." Her words hit him like stones. He wanted to shout back, confess everything, tell her about the nights Sarah grew distant, the hidden messages, the glint of fear in her eyes he didn't understand. But he stayed silent. Protecting Sarah, even in her betrayal, felt like the only thing left he could do for her. At night, depression closed in. He stopped answering calls, stopped cooking, stopped shaving. Some evenings he sat on the floor with a bottle, staring at old photographs, their wedding day, their first apartment, the road trip where Sarah sang along to every song out of tune. The more he clung to memories, the more they slipped like sand through his fingers. The silence became unbearable, yet he refused to break it. His refusal only made him look guilty, a man with something to hide. Soon, whispers followed him at the supermarket, at work, even in the pub. Maybe he drove her away. Maybe he did worse. Daniel endured it all, hollow-eyed and sleepless. Deep down, he feared they weren't entirely wrong. Maybe he had driven her away, not with cruelty, but with his inability to give her what she craved, more than a modest life. One evening, he stood at the window as rain streaked the glass. Somewhere across the world, Sarah was stepping deeper into the arms of another man, a man whose shadow Daniel could already feel stretching across his quiet home. Across the sea, Daniel's unease was not unfounded. The shadow he imagined was real, looming over Sarah in the glittering halls of Kareem's mansion. At first, she mistook it for care. The way he always wanted to know where she was, whom she spoke to, what she thought. His questions sounded affectionate, even protective. But soon, affection sharpened into interrogation. One evening, when she returned late from the terrace garden, Kareem was waiting in the corridor. His expression was calm, but his eyes burned. "Where were you?" he asked softly, too softly. "I was outside. Just needed air." "Air is inside, not beyond the gate." His words carried no anger, but she felt the threat beneath them. "Next time you tell me." Sarah nodded, but the knot in her stomach tightened. From then on, she noticed how nothing in the house was truly private. Her phone disappeared and reappeared. Her laptop required his staff's password. Even her movements were trailed by silent drivers. The luxury around her had turned into a gilded cage. At night, Kareem's tenderness returned. Lavish gifts on her pillow, long dinners where he spoke of his empire, his struggles, his loneliness. He told her she was the answer to it all. Yet every promise of love came with the unspoken clause. She belonged to him. The imbalance grew starker when she tried to connect with friends back home. One afternoon, she called an old coworker on the mansion's balcony. She laughed for the first time in weeks, the sound almost foreign to her ears. But minutes later, Kareem appeared behind her, plucking the phone from her hand with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You don't need them anymore," he said, slipping the device into his pocket. "They don't understand the life you've chosen." Her chest tightened. "I only wanted to say hello. And I only want to protect you." His tone was gentle but final. That night, Sarah lay awake, staring at the ceiling's carved patterns. She realized she had traded one life for another, not freedom for security, but one form of captivity for a more beautiful cage. The Sheikh's affection, which had dazzled her at first, was rooted not in love but in control. The housemaids avoided eye contact with her. The guards bowed but never spoke. She was surrounded by people, yet suffocated by loneliness. Every laugh, every smile she forced in Kareem's presence felt borrowed, fragile, ready to crack. The idea of escape began as a whisper. She pushed it away at first, telling herself she was imagining things, that she could adjust. But the more Kareem's grip tightened, the louder the whisper grew. She started to test boundaries in small ways. Keeping a spare SIM card hidden. Memorizing the layout of the mansion, the pattern of the guard's shifts, the routes the driver took when ferrying her to high-end boutiques. Each detail became part of a mental map, an invisible path back to freedom. Yet with every secret she carried, fear grew alongside it. Kareem noticed everything. If her smile lingered too long on a memory, if her silence stretched a moment too far, his eyes would narrow. He had a way of making her feel transparent, as if her very thoughts betrayed her. One evening, after dinner, he placed a velvet box before her. Inside lay a diamond bracelet, so heavy it seemed more chain than jewel. "For you," he said. "A symbol. You are mine, Sarah." She smiled weakly, fastening it around her wrist, though inside she shivered. The bracelet glittered, cold and suffocating. That night, as Kareem slept beside her, Sarah lay awake with her arm draped across her chest. The diamonds pressed into her skin like shackles. She knew then that planning was no longer enough. She needed contact, someone outside, someone who could remind her she wasn't alone in this prison of gold. And far away, Daniel's phone sat untouched on his nightstand, waiting for a message that might change everything. The bracelet dug into Sarah's wrist as she typed beneath the covers, the screen of the cheap phone glowing faintly in the dark. She had hidden the device inside a drawer lined with scarves, a spare SIM card tucked in where Kareem's staff wouldn't think to search. Each night, When Kareem's breathing deepened beside her, she slid the phone into her hands and let her thumbs move as if her life depended on it. Daniel, are you awake? The first message had taken her 20 minutes to compose. She nearly deleted it twice before pressing send. When his reply came, 3 simple words, I'm still here, her chest tightened with a mix of relief and guilt so strong it made her tremble. From then on, the messages spilled out in fragments. Regret surfaced between them like a tide neither could control. I should have told you the truth. Why didn't you? Because I thought this was the only way out. Out of us, or out of your life. Her eyes blurred as she typed back. Both, maybe. I don't know anymore. In the silence of the mansion, Sarah clung to the words glowing on the screen. Daniel's messages didn't sound angry, though pain threaded through each line. He asked if she was safe, if she was eating, if Kareem treated her well. She lied sometimes, not wanting to burden him with the reality of her isolation. But her hands shook when she wrote, I feel like a prisoner here. I don't know how much longer I can stay. Daniel's reply came fast, as if he had been waiting. Then come home. Please, Sarah. Just come home. Her throat tightened. She wanted to believe it was that simple, that a plane ticket could undo months of secrets, that Kareem would simply let her walk away. But every glance, every command, every chain disguised as a gift told her escape would not be given. It would have to be stolen. She deleted their conversations each morning, her finger lingering on the screen as if erasing his words was a betrayal. Still, she couldn't risk discovery. But Kareem noticed. He always noticed. One evening, during dinner, his eyes lingered on her too long. He asked her to pass the bread, though the dish sat directly in front of him. When she reached for it, her hand shook. His gaze followed the tremor, like a predator watching prey. You're distracted, he said, not unkindly. What weighs on you? Sarah forced a smile. Nothing. Just tired. Kareem leaned back, his smile mirroring hers but sharper. Tired women make mistakes. Be careful with your rest. The words were spoken like advice, but Sarah felt the warning under them. That night, she barely touched her phone, too aware of his eyes even in sleep. Still, before dawn, she risked one more message. He suspects something. Daniel's reply came instantly, as though he hadn't slept either. Then stop. Please, Sarah. Don't risk it. I can't lose you completely. She bit her lip until it bled. I've already lost myself. I can't stop now. When she finally drifted into uneasy sleep, the phone slipped beneath her pillow, hidden but never safe. The following morning, Kareem's staff moved through the mansion with unusual quiet. Sarah felt his eyes on her even when he wasn't in the room. The walls themselves seemed to tighten. She knew the danger was no longer distant. It was circling closer, waiting for the moment her lies would unravel. And when it came, it would not be gentle. Sarah had grown careless. Sleep-deprived and trembling with nerves, she had tucked the hidden phone into the drawer but left the scarf slightly out of place. The following evening, when she returned to her bedroom, the drawer stood open. The phone lay on the bed, screen cracked as if crushed beneath a hand. Kareem sat in the chair by the window, his silhouette outlined by the city lights beyond the glass. He didn't speak at first. His silence pressed against her like a wall, heavier than shouting could ever be. Finally, he lifted the phone and let it dangle between his fingers. Who is he? Sarah froze. Her pulse thundered in her ears. It's not what you think. It is exactly what I think. His voice was calm, but beneath it lurked a fury she had only glimpsed before. You lie in my bed, wear my gifts, eat at my table, and whisper to another man in the dark? Her mouth went dry. Daniel is my husband. I owed him honesty. I owed him. You owe me. Kareem snapped, his control fracturing. The phone hit the floor, shattering into pieces. From the moment you stepped into this house, you ceased belonging anywhere else. Sarah backed away, her hand gripping the bedpost. You don't own me. For the first time, his mask slipped. Kareem stood, towering, his expression stripped of charm. Everything here is mine. You are mine. And you have shamed me. The argument spiraled, voices rising, words like knives. Sarah pleaded for understanding, tried to explain that she felt trapped, that she needed freedom, that the man she had once believed him to be was not the man who now stood before her. Kareem heard none of it. You would crawl back to him? After everything I have given you? His voice echoed through the marble halls. Ungrateful. Foolish. Weak. Tears blurred Sarah's vision. I only wanted to live, Kareem, not to disappear into your shadow. Then came the sound. A crash, glass shattering against the floor. A scream that tore through the mansion walls, raw and desperate. Neighbors later told police they had heard it, sharp enough to wake them, followed by a silence, so sudden it was chilling. Inside, the stillness felt endless. When the staff finally entered the wing, the lights were out. The bedroom was in disarray. Curtains ripped, a lamp toppled, the faint smear of blood near the doorframe. But Sarah was gone. Kareem emerged minutes later, his shirt immaculate, his face unreadable. He ordered the staff to clean the room immediately, no questions asked. She is left, he said simply, his tone final. She was not meant for this life. But the whispers could not be silenced. Guards muttered about what they had heard. Maids avoided the wing altogether. And outside the mansion gates, the desert swallowed its secrets as easily as it swallowed the night. By morning, Sarah Malik had vanished. No police report was filed. No search parties were sent. Officially, she had chosen to leave. Unofficially, the city hummed with rumors of a foreign woman who screamed in the night and was never seen again. Thousands of miles away, Daniel woke with a start, his chest heavy with dread he could not explain. He reached for his phone, half expecting a message that would never come. Instead, there was only silence. Vast, unbroken silence. And 2 months later, that silence would end, when the desert itself gave up half of what it had taken. The desert kept its secrets for 2 months. Wind buried footprints, heat scorched evidence, and silence cloaked everything that had unfolded that night. But secrets, like bodies, do not stay hidden forever. A group of migrant workers digging near an unfinished construction site stumbled on what the sand refused to keep buried. At first, they thought it was debris, pale fragments jutting from the earth. But when the truth revealed itself, the site erupted into chaos. Police swarmed, cordoning off the area as cameras clicked and reporters pressed forward, hungry for the story. What they uncovered was not whole. Only half of Sarah Malik's body lay there, wrapped hastily in fabric that had frayed beneath the sun. The other half was gone, devoured by time, by scavengers, or by something darker no one wanted to name. News broke within hours. British woman found dead in Dubai desert. The headline traveled faster than the investigation itself. By nightfall, Sarah's smiling photographs, wedding portraits, candid images pulled from social media, were plastered across television screens and newspaper covers in both Dubai and the UK. Shock rippled through her hometown first. Neighbors who had whispered about her sudden departure now lowered their voices in guilt. Mrs. Carver shook her head at reporters outside her gate. I knew something was wrong when she left like that. I told Daniel. Poor boy, though, who really knows what goes on behind closed doors? The press seized on the angle immediately. Sarah had abandoned her husband for a life of luxury abroad. Now she was dead. The narrative wrote itself. The bitter husband, left behind and humiliated, had motive enough to orchestrate revenge. In London, Daniel woke to the news on his doorstep. A photograph of Sarah, smiling, vibrant, alive, stared at him from the front page, beneath the headline, Murdered in Dubai. Husband questioned. His coffee mug slipped from his hand, shattering on the floor. He sank into a chair, numb, his mind refusing to reconcile the words with the woman he once kissed goodbye at Heathrow. Murdered. Half her body. Desert sands. By noon, reporters surrounded his house. Microphones thrust toward him, questions firing like bullets. Did you know she was in danger? Did you send her to Dubai? Did you hire someone to follow her? Daniel said nothing. His silence, which once protected Sarah, now condemned him. Cameras captured his hollow face, his refusal to answer, and broadcasted his guilt. Police requested his presence for questioning. Inside the station, the fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as detectives laid photographs on the table, gruesome images of the desert, of what had been found. Daniel's stomach lurched. "You had motive," one officer said flatly. "She left you. She humiliated you. You were angry." "I loved her," Daniel whispered, his voice breaking. "Even when she left, I loved her." The officer leaned forward. "Then why didn't you report her missing? Why wait? Why stay silent?" Daniel's hands trembled. He couldn't tell them the truth, that she left for another man, that she had texted him from a gilded prison, that his silence was the only shield he could give her. To confess would mean exposing everything Sarah had risked, and even now, he couldn't betray her. But silence, once again, became his enemy. When he returned home, the media storm had only grown. Headlines screamed about betrayal, jealousy, murder. His name was etched into the narrative before any evidence had been weighed. In the court of public opinion, Daniel Malik was already guilty. And yet, somewhere in Dubai, threads of the truth remained hidden: letters, messages, witnesses. Secrets waiting to be unraveled. The investigation gained momentum in the weeks following the discovery of Sarah's body. What had begun as a missing person case transformed into a puzzle of betrayal, secrecy, and money trails stretching across borders. Detectives combed through her belongings left behind in London. Hidden between folded clothes in a shoebox were handwritten letters, drafts never mailed, pages filled with Sarah's looping script. "Daniel, I can't explain why I'm doing this, not fully. But I need to believe there's more out there for me. Please don't hate me. Please don't stop loving me." The words painted a portrait of conflict, a woman torn between safety and desire, loyalty and freedom. To investigators, however, the letters were less about heartbreak and more about motive. A marriage fractured by betrayal could breed rage. Further digging revealed bank statements showing irregular deposits into Sarah's account before she left. Thousands transferred from an overseas source linked to Dubai. Detectives flagged it immediately. Was she being paid, supported, bought? And then came the whispers. Former co-workers told reporters they had noticed Sarah's distracted moods in the months before she left, the hushed phone calls, the sudden new clothes she never explained. Some hinted she was already involved with another man, wealthy, older, foreign. Others claimed she had confided fears she couldn't speak aloud. The pieces twisted into a narrative, one the media devoured. Sarah Malik abandoned her marriage for an affair with a powerful man, and somewhere in that triangle, betrayal turned fatal. Meanwhile, Daniel sat in interview rooms, his hands clasped, his eyes hollow. He answered questions when he could, but his voice carried the weight of shame. Each time detectives pressed him on the letters, on the money, on her affair, he faltered. He refused to confirm what he knew of Kareem, refused to expose Sarah's secrets even after death. "Why won't you tell us everything?" one detective demanded during a late-night session. "If you're innocent, why hide?" Daniel's throat tightened. "Because some truths don't save anyone. They only destroy more." His refusal became evidence in itself. His silence was treated as obstruction, his grief mistaken for guilt. Headlines framed him as the archetype of the jealous husband, burned by betrayal, consumed by revenge. Yet cracks appeared in the official story. A forensics report noted that the fabric Sarah's remains were wrapped in matched textiles, not from London but from the UAE. Flight records showed Daniel had never left the UK during the period in question. Still, suspicion lingered, fueled less by facts than by perception. Detectives expanded their focus to Dubai, but walls of influence blocked them. Requests for cooperation stalled. Witnesses retracted statements. Rumors circulated of a man too powerful to accuse, too connected to touch. Back in London, Daniel's lawyer urged him to fight publicly, to speak out, to deny the accusations with force. But Daniel shook his head. "I won't shout over her memory. That's not who I am." His silence, once again, spoke louder than words. Meanwhile, in Dubai, behind guarded gates and shuttered windows, Sheikh Karim entertained guests with his usual charm. But when investigators pressed officials for access, doors closed. Statements emerged. She left of her own will. She was never harmed here. And so the focus shifted again, from an absent Sheikh to the grieving man at home. The story of Sarah Malik was no longer just about a woman found in the desert. It had become a war of narratives, truth splintered between continents, justice caught in the hands of power. The cameras adored him. Sheikh Karim appeared in a crisp white kandura at a charity gala weeks after Sarah's remains were identified. Smiling effortlessly, he addressed the press with grace, offering condolences for the tragic loss of a woman who chose her own path. She was free to come and go, he declared, voice steady, eyes unblinking. She left as she came, on her own will. May she rest in peace. The words, rehearsed and polished, slid across headlines the next morning. To many, he sounded like a grieving benefactor. To those who had known Sarah, his speech rang hollow. Behind closed doors, the machinery of influence worked quietly. Police officials who initially flagged inconsistencies in Karim's account suddenly grew hesitant. Witnesses, the maid who had seen the broken lamp, the guard who had heard screams that night, were called in for reconsideration. Within days, their statements evaporated. Some left the city altogether. Others signed declarations contradicting their earlier words. One junior officer, speaking anonymously, confided to a journalist, "There are things you don't investigate here. You learn quickly where the lines are drawn." For Sarah's family in the UK, those lines felt like walls. Requests for access, for cooperation, for joint investigation, all met with bureaucratic delays. Cultural sensitivities, officials said. Respect for sovereignty. The effect was the same, paralysis. Meanwhile, whispers spread through the expatriate community. A woman had vanished. A body, half buried, half lost, had surfaced. But no one dared name Karim directly. Instead, stories cloaked themselves in euphemism: a powerful man, a dangerous lover, a mistake made permanent. Karim himself moved with practiced ease. At social gatherings, he charmed foreign diplomats, laughing over wine, shaking hands with executives. To the public eye, he was untouchable, a man wrongfully entangled in a scandal he bore with dignity. Yet, within the walls of his mansion, a different truth lingered. Staff walked softly, their eyes lowered. Rooms once occupied by Sarah remained locked, their silence a haunting reminder. On occasion, Karim paced the halls late at night, muttering to himself, anger and fear leaking through the cracks of his composure. When pressed by one of his closest advisors about the night Sarah disappeared, his jaw tightened. "I told you," he said coldly. "She left. That is the only truth anyone will hear." But the advisor noticed the tremor in his hands as he poured his drink. Back in London, journalists seized on every inconsistency. A BBC segment aired footage of Sarah with Karim at a Dubai resort weeks before her death. The images showed her smiling, but her eyes betrayed unease, her body angled ever so slightly away from him. The program ended with a chilling question. If she left willingly, why was only half of her found? Still, Karim's reach was long. Lawsuits threatened publications that pressed too far. Stories were retracted. An independent blogger who suggested foul play vanished from the online space altogether. Daniel watched these developments with growing despair. He recognized the pattern. Truth was being buried, just as Sarah had been. And with each denial from Karim, each silenced witness, Daniel's own silence became heavier, more unbearable. Late one night, Daniel whispered to himself in his empty flat. She screamed. Someone heard her. They can't erase that. But in Dubai, erasure was exactly what was happening. Evidence dissolved. Voices disappeared. Power pressed down like sand over a grave. The case that had begun with a scream now threatened to end with silence. And in that silence, Daniel realized something. If the system refused to break Karim's facade, someone else would have to. The desert winds carried their own silence, a silence that seemed to echo Sarah's absence. Months had passed since the discovery of her remains, Yet only half of her body had been returned to the UK. Half a body for half a story, Daniel thought bitterly as he watched the casket lowered into the ground. The funeral was small. Neighbors who once gossiped now avoided his eyes. His mother stood beside him, her hand cold but steady. A few of Sarah's old friends attended, whispering condolences, though none dared mention Dubai, the Sheikh, or the headlines. What could they say? To them, Sarah's tragedy was a newspaper clipping, a fleeting scandal already replaced by the next story of violence and betrayal. But to Daniel, it was a wound that would never close. As the priest spoke, Daniel's mind wandered. He pictured Sarah's smile on the day they first met, her laughter filling the air of their tiny apartment. Then he remembered her final texts, words laced with regret, fear, and a longing she would never escape. "I should have saved you," he muttered under his breath, too low for anyone else to hear. After the burial, reporters hovered at the cemetery gates, cameras flashing as though grief were a spectacle. Daniel kept his head low, walking past them without a word. Their questions pierced the air. Did you kill her? Did you drive her to leave? Do you blame the Sheikh? He remained silent as always. Back in Dubai, Kareem lived untouched, his life uninterrupted. He hosted dinners, sealed business deals, and appeared at public events draped in wealth and charm. When asked about Sarah, he shook his head solemnly. She was a troubled woman, he said. Her choices were her own. His words traveled across oceans, reshaping the narrative. To the world, he was untouchable. To those who knew the truth, or thought they did, his denial was salt in an open wound. Detectives closed the case without answers. Insufficient evidence, the report read. The desert, after all, kept its secrets. Witnesses who once dared to speak had been silenced, either by fear or by force. The fabric that wrapped Sarah's remains was dismissed as inconclusive. Every thread unraveled into nothing. And so justice, like Sarah, was left incomplete. At night, Daniel wandered his apartment, pacing the floorboards until dawn. He replayed her final calls, her laughter fading into sobs, her whispers drowned in static. He saw her face in every shadow, her voice in every silence. Guilt consumed him, heavy and relentless. His mother tried to console him. You did what you could, Daniel. You're not to blame. But he shook his head. I didn't fight hard enough. I let them take her story away. Some nights he considered going public, shouting her truth across every channel, every paper, every stage. But he knew how the world worked. Power silenced the weak. Stories were bought, twisted, erased. If he spoke, they would paint him as unstable, bitter, untrustworthy. And Sarah's memory would suffer even more. So he carried her silence alone. In the end, the world remembered Sarah Malik not as a woman but as a headline. British wife found dead in Dubai desert. They remembered the scandal, the whispers of forbidden love, the speculation of betrayal. Few remembered the woman herself, the girl who loved fiercely, who laughed loudly, who only wanted freedom. The truth, Daniel realized, had died with her. One evening, as he sat by the window staring into the gray London sky, he whispered into the quiet, I'll remember for both of us. His voice broke. Even if the world forgets. Somewhere far away, the desert sands shifted, erasing footprints, swallowing secrets whole. And with them, the last echoes of Sarah's story disappeared, unfinished, unanswered, and unbearably human.